through this. In my handout, I have questions, and again, available online. I have a few copies up here. There's a difference between coaching and managing. All right, when coaching, we need to become a thinking partner instead of a telling expert. How many of you remember or are familiar with Pez candies? Right? You know, with a Pez, you open the head and out pops a candy. And you take the candy and you're happy. How many of us manage kind of the same way? We become telling experts, and our people come to us with a problem, and we go, and we give them the answer, and they go away happy, and you know, we think we're being expedient, but we're not, because there's no growth happening. There's no change happening. There's no engagement there. The employee's not engaged. They just learn that they can come to me like a monkey pushing a button, or a parrot, whatever, and they push the button and out comes my answer, and they run away, and they're safe because if the answer's wrong, it's not their answer, it's my answer. They're not engaged. So with coaching, what we do instead is we become thinking partners. We ask our team members to think through the problem, and we will help them. We're going to think through it with them. We do that by asking questions. And there's a particular framework that I like, and I call this the PRIDE framework because the acronym spells out pride. That's the only reason. There's no real pride involved, but the first thing is preparing to coach. Getting in that coach's mindset, thinking partner mindset. I'm not going to just give the answer. I know that's what this person wants. I know that might seem quick, but it's not good for the organization in the long run. So prepare to coach. Refine the outcomes. What is the outcome that you really want to achieve? You ask the question to the person that you're coaching. What high-level outcome that is aligned with our greater goal, that's aligned with our purpose, are you trying to achieve? Let's be specific. Let's really clarify it. And you ask questions until that person can articulate. I'm struggling with Lucinda. I really don't know what to do with her. She's not showing up on time. And people are starting to talk. The other people are starting to talk. Well, what's the problem? Is it her being on time? Is it the other people starting to talk? Or which? So help them narrow down. Well, it might be two separate problems. So clarify the outcomes. And then you generate ideas. Well, and I'm going to give you a tip. Start with success. All right? So when you start to generate ideas, ask this question. What have you tried so far and how is it working? What have you tried so far and how is it working? Or what have you done in the past for something similar? And how successful was that? Or who do you know that might be able to help answer this question? Right? You're asking questions. You're drawing out. And then when it's time to start talking about problems, roadblocks, you say, well, what currently are the roadblocks that are in your way? And how could we build bridges to somebody who might be able to help us resolve that roadblock? And what information do you need in order to achieve your outcome? Right? Then we decide on specific actions. Once you've generated as many ideas, and when we're generating ideas, it's fair to just say, and what else? What other ideas do you have? Right? Just allow them to think. And then decide on specific actions. Okay, of the items that we've discussed, of the things that we've discussed, which one motivates you the most and why? And what specific action are you willing to take and when? Right? You're asking that person to commit to a specific action. And when can we follow up to see what the results are? And then we evaluate and engage. So, has this conversation been helpful? What about this conversation has been helpful? What's missing? And can we take any of the insights that we've gained in this conversation and apply them to any other parts of the project or the project team or the organization at large? Right? Build on those successes. Now, coaching for growth and being able to ask those questions, there's a critical skill, and this is the fifth tool, and that's listening to learn. And I'm a big proponent of practice in listening. It's something we have to think about. You can't, I know we were all born with 2 ears, and the saying is God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth and all that kind of stuff, but through the years and however it happens, we stop listening. And so we have to get back into the habit of how to listen. And I want to tell you a story about Clark Terry. Clark Terry in 1947 was the best jazz musician of his day. He played in Count Basie's band. And he was a trumpet player, young kid, best of the best. Now another band member, Duke Ellington, wanted Clark Terry in his band in a bad way. And so he threw all kind of money at him, he threw all kind of opportunity at him, and finally he wooed him. He convinced Clark Terry to leave Count Basie's band and join the Duke Ellington Orchestra. So it was the first day, and Clark had been up all night. He'd been thinking about what he was going to do to impress the Duke and his new bandmates. He had been practicing his licks. He was thinking about what he was going to do. And he got there, and he asked Duke Ellington, he said, Duke, so what do you want me to do? What do you want me to play? And Duke said, Clark, I don't want you to play anything today. Today, you're just going to listen. And Clark was upset, man. He was the best of the best. He was the best young gun around. He had the chops. He said, what do you mean? You're paying me to play? What do you mean you just want me to listen? And Duke said, Clark, we are an orchestra. We play together. He said, what I need you to do, I understand you're the best of the best. But what I need you to do is I need you to listen to the orchestra. And I need you to find those best places for you to use that amazing talent of yours. Well, the rest of the story is that Duke Ellington's band was amazing. Clark Terry became one of the most well-known jazz musicians, but he had to listen in order to learn. Right? Too many times when we listen, what do we listen to do? Respond. We listen to respond. So in order to listen to learn, we have, and I've got another acronym, it's my PAIR. I call it the PAIR framework because it spells out PAIR, because it takes 2, right, to have a conversation, a pair of people. And the first thing you do is you plan. You have to plan to listen, right? So eliminate distractions. And here's the thing that I'm going to suggest, and it's that you might not think of when you usually get into a situation where you're going to be listening to someone. Don't think about what you're going to say. Think about the questions you're going to ask. Think about that ahead of time. What do I want to learn from this encounter? And what questions do I need to ask to learn that? Attend. Pay attention to the person sitting across from you. Don't have your computer screen up. Turn your phone off. Don't answer your phone. Because as soon as you do that, you've broken that connection that you might have that would be engaging that person. You've broken the trust, and it's going to be so hard to win it back. One of the things that I've learned recently, and I'm going to, in the book, Creating a Thinking Environment, the author talks about looking the person in the eye and watching their eyes even when they're not looking at you. So that if they look away, because people do that when they're talking, when they're thinking out loud, they'll look up, they'll look away, so that when they look back at you, you're looking at them. And I've tried it, I can vouch for it. It improves your listening ability by an order of magnitude. It really does help. So I'm going to recommend that you try that. Just look at watch that person's eyes. And you might even notice, how many times when they, what their body language is when they're really deeply thinking, they tend to look up. They tend to, it's like the answer's out there somewhere and they're going to find it. And also pay attention to their nonverbal to their body language and to their facial expressions. This is another thing that I'll admit that I struggled with for a while. I would be in a meeting, and I'd come out of the meeting and someone would say, boy, Joe was really upset. And I'd say, really? I mean, I didn't think he was upset. He gave his report just fine. Oh, no, did you? He was tapping his pen on his computer. He was fidgeting. He couldn't sit still. It's like, I missed it completely because I wasn't paying attention to the speaker. I wasn't listening completely. Inquire. You have to ask questions. And ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are those questions that start with who, what, when, and where, right? They can't be answered in a yes or no. They have to give a more detailed answer. Now, there's one more W word, right, that I didn't use, and that's because I'm going to caution you about the word why. It's valid, but it's kind of like want on the engaging, disengaging, depending on the context. And I'm going to tell you that many times, probably most times, when you start a question with why, that's a signal to the person you're talking to become defensive. Because they think you're going to say, why did you do that? And in their mind, they're hearing, why would you do something so stupid, right? It's human nature. So why can be valid, but be careful. And a better way to ask the same kind of a question is, well, so what led to that outcome? Or what led to this situation? Not why did that happen or why did they do that? What do you think motivated them to do that? It's a safer way to ask that question. And then the last one, and this is the most important, resist the urge to respond. Even if you have a great idea, don't interrupt the person that you're listening to with that idea because you'll shut down the thinking environment. And you will foster disengagement. So if you're listening to someone and they say something and you have a great idea, jot it down. Right? Now you might have to look down to jot it down, but jot it down. And then once the person is done, once the person has stated their case, then you say, thank you for sharing that. Would you mind if I share some of my thoughts? Or would you mind if I share a thought I have? Again, you're respecting the choice of that individual. And if you're trying to help them solve a problem, they may say, you know what, no, I'm good. And then you might have to, and then it's negotiating. No, really, I have a great thought. Please let me share something. But, and again, and I speak from experience because I know that so many times, and I work as a coach and I work as a consultant, and I coach and I consult on these things. And sometimes someone will put something, and it's like putting a biscuit in front of a dog and then saying no. You've all seen that trick? They'll say something and it's just laying there, and I want to jump on it. And it's like I have to physically restrain myself and sit on my hands and say, watch their eyes. It's simple, like Marcelino said in his, simple does not equate to easy, right? It's a simple idea. It's not easy, and I would be the first to admit that it's not. But please resist that urge to respond, and you will be surprised at how many good ideas your team members come up with. And the last thing, and I'm going to wrap this up very quickly because this kind of ties it all together, evaluate to engage. Too many times we evaluate to correct, right? We only think of evaluating someone when they're not pulling their weight or when they're not doing what we need them to be doing to achieve our outcomes. That's when we evaluate. What I'm saying is you need to also evaluate when things are going very well. So I would say evaluate regularly, whether there's a problem or not. Do regular evaluations. Now, you're going to bring together in an evaluation all of the tools we just talked about, but I'm going to add a couple of things. First of all, what's my first rule is always plan. Plan to evaluate. Don't go into any sort of an evaluation cold. Raise your hand if you've ever gone into an evaluation without preparing and it has failed miserably. Nobody has done that? I don't believe you for a second. I've done it. I've stubbed my toe on this more than once where I think, I know the issue. I know, okay, they're going to come in, I'll evaluate them, and then it goes off the rails in 30 seconds, and the person ends up upset, and I end up upset, and I think, what the heck just happened there? How did I do that? So plan your evaluation and use a tool. I include in my handout pack this form that I found called Providing Candid Feedback. Now, my wife actually turned me on to this, and her organization did use this to make corrections, and it's an excellent tool for making corrections. It's also an excellent tool for giving feedback when things are going well. And so I would suggest that you endeavor to do both. Again, all of the things we just talked about, when you evaluate, focus 80% on your outcomes and your strengths, 20% on the deficits and weakness. Ask those coaching questions. Coach for growth. When we evaluate someone, when we want them to be engaged, we want them to grow. When they're growing, they're engaging. And listen. Listen to learn. So I have a bunch of resources. First of all, before I completely wrap up, what questions do you have? I heard applause on the other side, and I know we're out of time, so you're probably sitting on your hands because we've got some minutes. What questions do you have? All right. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is we're going to start with mindset. I want you to think about these tools. Think about using these tools. And again, I would be the first one to say, you're not going to pick all of these up from an hour-long presentation. If you would like, my contact information is on the handout sheets, or you can come up to me afterwards. I do coaching, I do consulting as well on all of these. And if you will try to incorporate these tools into your project management toolkit, you're going to find that you create an environment where your team members can engage, where they willingly contribute some of that discretionary time, and your projects are more successful. And that's what we want to achieve. Agreed? All right, thank you very much. Thank you.